2 updates in one day, but this one is actually really good, especially for those of you that have been waiting for faction change. If you saw this morning's video, you know it was about data mined info by Wowhead, and we looked at what some of that means. I did say then that there'll be more to come, and there's more now. Sorry, I'm trying to make a cup of tea, but you're lucky I'm at least out of bed this time. So we're going to have a look at the post, we're going to see what it means, because there's more than just faction change. I mean, faction change is more or less guaranteed at this point, because Blizzard have already said what's going to happen, and all of this actually in this post had been alluded to at one time or another anyway, so we'll also break that down a little bit. So first of all, I really want to point towards 2 sources. So back in August, Blizzard had put a message out talking about raid lockouts, as well as character-based mounts achievements, LFG tools, and many other things. But one of the big ones that they spoke about was race and faction change, where they said, while it won't be ready for our launch in September, we have changed our minds on this, and we're working on adding the race and faction change as a paid service in the future. So if you don't know, originally they said no. They didn't want to break the immersion and other things. I can't remember exactly what their reasoning was, but basically they said, no, we don't want this free money. And then they realised, well, actually, a lot of people give us this free money, so I want it. I'm ad-libbing, that's not exactly what they said, but you know what I mean. They're not going to say no when people are actually crying out to give them money to change factions. So originally they said, we planned not to offer race and faction change at all because it felt like it removed some of the fantasy feeling of having dramatically different physical attributes that affect your gameplay. We were also a little worried about the players chasing the flavour of the month in terms of racial abilities. However, we're convinced by the argument that being able to play with your friends is more important, and that you should be able to bring your accomplishments with you when you do. This turns out to be the same trade-off provided by transferring between realms, which is already available as a paid service, so it makes sense to make the same decision with respect to race and faction change. Okay, so that makes sense, obviously. So now let's have a look at what was actually data mined. So it's one string of text. It's not really a big deal, but the fact that it says faction change on it more or less means we're definitely getting it with Ulduar, so with Phase 2. So when we now actually look at the new data mine stuff by Wowhead, you can see there's something about character titles for Battlemaster, you've got about currencies, so arena points looks like potentially the total cap going up, and then there's loads of global strings. We're going to get onto the auction house bits in a minute, because again, I want to give you a little bit of a background and actually talk a little bit about how it could look if we was to use the retail system. Now the retail system is vastly different to obviously Classic, but Blizzard have already said that they don't want to move to the retail system, but there's some specific little settings and filters that they want to get in Classic, and they did say that it will be ready for Wrath, but just not at launch, so we'll look at that as well. But the thing that actually really makes us think that faction change is coming in Phase 2 is this line here that says, char faction change arena team. And it says you may not change factions while still on an arena team. Now this is something that's probably just been pulled in from other game files because, as you know, well, maybe you don't, there are no arena teams. So faction changing while in an arena team is technically impossible. But the fact that it's got actually something to do with faction change there more or less confirms that it's going to be coming with Phase 2. Whilst faction change isn't something that I'm going to use myself, it is something that I think should be in the game, because if you've got a guild that falls apart or you're on a particularly one-sided server, you can still stay on the same server, but yeah, just faction change. It makes sense. Now, as you'll notice, there's lots of global strings that have been data mined as well, all looking like they revolve around the auction house, which they absolutely do. Now, if we go back to the end of August when this post was put out, they was actually talking about this with the Community Council. And the main part of this that's relevant is where it says you also talked about the default UI and how it's missing the ability to sort by buyout and unit price. Since low unit price buyouts are the most common player desire, it opens up scam opportunities with low bid price on high buyout items being sorted to the top, and encourages the posting of single item stacks, since bulk rate max stacks sort lower than single stacks. Because of that, we're going to investigate adding better sort options to Classic's default UI in an upcoming patch. It likely won't be in for launch, but we'll try to add it as soon as possible. And I believe that's exactly what this is. Just getting a little bit more of an improved UI would be really, really nice. But have you actually, for those of you that strictly play Classic and haven't played retail either ever or for a very long time, the retail auction house is actually really nice. Let me just show you. So it looks very similar on the face of it, but if we was to look for something where there's lots of stacks, So let's say we was going to look at gems. Now we know gems are broken down by colour in Classic, but actually they're broken by stat on the auction house in Retail. But if we was to look for stamina gems, it shows you all the different kinds. So there's no duplicates there, it's just every different type of gem that's actually listed on the auction house. And then when you click into it, so let's say we wanted Eye of the Sea, which is 3 stamina, it will show you how many stacks at each price there currently are listed. And you can say how many you want to buy, or you can literally press on all of them and buy all of them, and it will tell you what the total price is and the unit price. So if we was to look at something like trade goods and we was to look for some herbs, which will be probably a lot more realistic to what we'd actually be doing. Let's say you wanted to grab yourself some dream leaf. You can see all the different stacks, how much they're selling for, you know, not stacks, but units, how many units there are for each price. And then you can literally just put how many you physically want to buy out of each one of these listings. Or, like I said before, you can select multiple listings and buy entire price by stacks all together at once. I mean, I think that's really nice. Would that really be something that would be like, oh no, we don't want that? If they're going to make these changes and make the auction house better, why not make it a lot better by just more or less copying the Retail system? Because all they're actually going to probably add is the ability to just sort by buyout or sort by bid or stack size. It will just be an advanced filtering system rather than an actual overhaul of the way the auction house works, which I think this is what it could do with. But going through these strings, there's not that much else that was data mined outside of the fact that it does say faction change somewhere, even though it does say for arena teams, and like I said, they don't exist. And there was a few items as well: Stratholme Holy Water that says just 1 calorie, Bounty Satchels, and Festering Emerald Drakes that we already know exist. The Bounty Satchel could be classed as an interesting one because it looks like it's tied to Defense Protocol Alpha Terminated, because looking back at the earlier video today where Dungeons and Raids and it had Defense Protocol Alpha Terminated as the meta achievement, as in get all the achievements for that, and it's the meta achievement, you know what that is. The fact that that Bounty Satchel seems to have something to do with that, I don't know. I don't think it's tied to the meta achievement. For me, it's probably a reward bag for tanks and healers, but they're better reward bags because you're doing a more harder piece of content, if you like. I don't know. But yeah, that's about it really. Nothing too exciting, but if you have been waiting for faction change, maybe this will fill you with a bit of hope that you're going to get it in phase 2. But yeah, that's about it. So thanks for joining me while I made my late night cup of tea before I go and carry on grinding on my Druid. Be sure to like and subscribe. Roll the outro. There's lots of ways you can support the channel to keep me here putting out World of Warcraft content and covering all future MMOs. Consider joining the channel as a member. You get access to emotes, everyone will know you're a member when you comment on future videos because you get a nice icon next to your name, and you get access to members only videos, which I'll be putting a lot of on the channel throughout the year. Additionally, there's a Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.